I can remember running from my mom with a switch until I got to a corner, and then she spanked me there in the corner because I was trapped. I was born to two missionary parents. They were missionaries in Mexico. I was born just on the other side, on the Texas border side. And whenever I was 5 years old, I decided that I wanted to get baptized because I had seen people in the church, how happy they were and everything. After they got baptized, their life seemed to change. They were happier, friendlier people. And so I decided to get baptized. My dad was the one who baptized me because my dad was a minister after they were missionaries. And I remember looking out, and my heart was pounding, the water came up to my chest. I was about 5 years old at that time. And I remember coming up out of that water, remembering how happy I was and how joyful it felt. But that was a double-edged sword because I learned later how hard it would be to live up to that. So, because whenever I was 9 years old, I started noticing stuff. I started noticing things like beautiful women. And at 9 years old, I would wait till my parents were gone, and I would sneak into my mom's room, and I would steal her JCPenney catalog. That was my Playboy. And I would be flipping through that, looking for as much skin as I could find. And one day, my mom walks in and catches me. And so I throw the magazine under my bed trying to hide it, but it was too late. She already saw me. The next thing I remember is being in a daze of embarrassment and ending up in her room. And she looked at me and she's like, "What were you looking at?" And at that age, I hadn't really learned what to call it. So I was kind of embarrassed. My sisters were standing around watching, and I kind of looked up to her and I was like, boobies? And I don't remember whether I got a pop in the mouth, a spanking, or both. But I remember my sisters laughing at me and me getting in trouble for it, and I felt dirty. I felt like there was something wrong with me at that age. So then we fast forward to where I'm 11 years old. And my whole world of friends that I had at the church where my dad pastored, everything was ripped apart because my dad was overheard by somebody praying in tongues at the church that he was preaching at. And what they did was they went and they reported him to the board, and he got fired from his job. And the next day I went up there with him to his office to help him get his stuff out of his office, and they had changed the locks. Now, if you remember, I said, you know, I noticed people whenever they got baptized were happier, friendly people. What happened? Because these people that kicked my dad out of the church were supposed to be deacons and people that had a happier, friendly life. Why were they so bitter and hateful? But even after all that pain, I still decided I wanted to continue to experience God's love. So at the wise old age of 13, I decided to make a chart. Now on this chart, it was just a little piece of paper with a little arrow. I cut a little slit in the paper, put the arrow through, and on one side of the line was heaven and on the other side was hell. So if I helped my mom do her dishes, and that was a great thing, right? So it was one notch towards heaven. But if I had bad thoughts, like boobies, then I would move it one notch towards damnation. That chart only lasted for about a week or two because I was always damned. Damnation was winning. Even though God's love still burned in my heart through my teen years, I still didn't seem to be able to accomplish what I thought he wanted The more I tried to love him, the more I hated me. So at this point in my life, I was about 21, and I remember hanging out with friends after church, and we would have these worship times at their house, and you know, I remember the worship times that I had with them was the closest I felt to God ever before. And then there was a turn in my life. There was a point here where God made sure to get me to take notice. There was a flash one day. And in this flash, I looked in and I could see this room, this round room full of people. And in this round room, there was a pulpit at the front with a cross on its front. And I was behind that pulpit with a light, a golden light shining down, shaft of light just going right through my head and out of my mouth. And the people that were listening, it was being drawn out to them. They were eagerly hearing whatever it was that I was saying in this vision. And the light was just going out to them. And then came the end of the flash, and it was over. But it was over in like 1 second, but it felt like 5 minutes. It was so weird. I had never had a vision before, and it didn't understand it. It seemed odd. I didn't feel like I was worthy enough to talk about God in front of people, and that's what I could see in that vision that I was doing. Didn't make sense to me. And I knew that people in the Bible, whenever they had visions, I'd grown up with missionary parents, so I know that when people have visions, they know what's going on, or they know who to go to. I didn't. So I was like, what the heck? And I pushed it on the back burner. But then God made things even more confusing for me. Because then he started telling me, I want you to go talk to this brother over here and tell him such and such. And I want you to go over here and talk to this sister and encourage her. And I was like, wait a minute, wait. If I go do that, and I'm talking to the wrong person, I'm going to sound like a complete and utter idiot. So I didn't say no to God, but I didn't do it either. So my action was my no. I was kind of upset with God because I had been praying, because as I said, I was 21 by this time, and I had been praying all my life up to this point. God, take away my sinful desires. I want to serve you. I want to serve you 100%. I don't want to be unworthy. I don't want to be sinful. And you know what? God starts giving me visions while I'm still thinking about boobies all the time. What the heck? I don't understand this. Why are you doing this, God? One day my parents decide to pop by, and my mom opens up my fridge in my apartment. And she looks at me with tears streaming down from her eyes because she finds a 6-pack of Zima wine coolers. Who remembers Zima wine coolers? Anybody here remember Zima wine coolers? Yeah. I had a 6-pack of Zima wine coolers. That's 3% alcohol. And my mom is like, Paul, promise me never to buy these again. So I'm like, yes, Mom, I promise. Never to buy Zimas again. I won't buy Zimas again. Yeah, not Zimas. And by the time I was 23, as I mentioned earlier, I had married a beautiful Christian young lady. She had 2 boys. We had 2 daughters. And all this time, through that marriage, I was hiding my sin, my desires, my problems that I had inside my heart, my darkness. I grabbed her by her ankle and I started to try and pull her off the sofa. And she fell off the sofa. And I remember how bad I felt because my wife was already, at this point, like 6 months pregnant. It ended up in divorce. That's whenever I started getting into drugs. And deeper into the alcohol. I needed comfort. And I didn't understand why God wouldn't take things away from me and still try and use me. And so my comfort, I turned to alcohol. I turned to weed. And that became my God. I ended up living with some friends from a church in Arcadia. We lived in Sierra Madre, and I remember bar hopping all the way home from the new job that I had just gotten and losing that job. And I remember my sister calling me and giving me the option to move back to Florida from where I had come. But the problem was I would have to leave my daughters here in California. I didn't want to do that. I had this decision I had to make, so I didn't have, at that time, I didn't see any other option. So I decided to move back to Florida. And there I had nightmares just almost immediately after I got there. I kept having nightmares where I would hear my daughter's voice, and every time I went to go find her, she wasn't there. And at that point, I had gotten so low that I even got up to contemplating how I could end my life. And even at another point, I even tried. I started to get to that point where I almost tried. And it stopped me because my selfishness showed its face to me. And I saw that I couldn't leave my girls without a dad. I ended up living with friends and my mom and my sister, and bouncing from house to house, burning bridges everywhere I could, smoking and drinking. And there was this one point where I was just gotten my last pitcher of beer with the last little bit of money that I had. And I was sitting on the back porch of a friend's house that I was staying at. And they were telling me I was an alcoholic, and I was like, no, you're wrong. I'm fine. I'm not a quitter. But one day, I decided, you know what? I was on that back porch and I was thinking more and more about how I hate the fact that I've been going from church to church through all of this, and from house to house through all of this, and living this double life, and being dependent on people, and being so heartless to these people that are trying to help me. And to me, it was them hurting me. But at that point in time, I found out that it was actually me that was hurting me. And I decided on that back porch, drunk and high, I was gonna walk to California. Because I didn't have money. I was trapped. I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't do anything for myself. I felt like I was just hopeless. So I got up and I grabbed my essentials of a laptop and 3 sets of clothes. And I walked out that door. And on the way to California, I realized that I had spent my last little bit on the beer and not had enough money left over for my cigarettes. And I just smoked my last cigarette. So I was getting really depressed at that point. And as I'm walking down the street towards the interstate, I notice there's a pack of cigarettes on the ground. I figured, maybe it's just 1 or 2 in there or something, maybe. I kick it, it's missing 1 cigarette, my favorite kind, Camel Crush Blue. Now see, this is funny because looking back on my story, I can see what that was. That was Jesus baiting me. Keep going, keep going, keep going. But I didn't see that then. A little too high, a little too drunk to think like that. But as I continued on, it started to get dark. My liquid alcoholic courage was starting to wear off, and so I decided I needed to thumb a ride. So I stuck my thumb out. The first car to pull me over took me all the way to Tallahassee, Florida. And by the way, that guy was a drug dealer. And yeah, that's a whole nother story. So from Tallahassee, Florida, I get 2 more rides to California. 2 rides after that one to California in 4 days, people. I walked maybe a block or two. So God had it all planned out. So I get here to California, and I get over here to the Union Rescue Mission. And I get from there, I can only stay a week, so I ended up in the Rotary House. Now the Rotary House, I know a lot of you probably already know. You can party outside, out front, in front of the Rotary House. So I drank, and I looked for work, and I drank, and looked for work. Till one day, in all of that, I heard God tell me something. God told me this. And it's simple. But it's a simple fact that's so deep. He says this, Paul, when you go to the bathtub, you don't go to the bathtub already clean.
That's it.
Why would you go to the bathtub already clean? No, you go to the bathtub dirty, and you get in, and you let the water cleanse you.
Amen.
And it was then that I realized something. I needed to go to God just like I was. Drunk, high, whatever. God wanted me. God loved me. God was calling me to come to Him.
Hallelujah.
Now, this is such a point that you probably think, hey, this is where his story ends. He gets to see God, talk to God, and everything starts going okay. No. Because after that little talk with Jesus, I went to church, and after church, I went and I got 3 pitchers of beer, 2 joints of weed, and 1 new drug that I had just recently discovered at that time called Spice. I ended up face down around the corner from the church I had just came out of. After I got kicked out of the Rotary House for that little bit, I was told that the LA Mission has really good food. This is about 2 years and so many months ago. And so I decided to go there. But you know how it is over there. You got to go to that chapel service beforehand, right? So I'm sitting there in the chapel service. And as I sit there, I decide I need to pray. And whenever I go to pray, I lean my head back. And I noticed something familiar. There's a round ceiling in that chapel right over there. And then I looked at the front and I saw this pulpit with a cross on its front. And I'm like, this is the room? This is the room that I saw 17 years ago in a vision. Okay, tears started streaming because I knew at that point, I knew that I was in the right place. Because I had had a vision of that room so many years ago. Never been to California. Never been to LA. 9 months later, I was introducing the pastors over there as they came to the chapel services. And I had a time to share. I don't know if any of y'all have heard me over there share, but I got a time to share and read and talk about God. And now I know that no matter how unworthy I feel I am, God is calling me to help clean me and to bring me closer to His pure love. Thank you.
Buice, ladies and gentlemen, give him another round of applause.